I'm going to call to order the Timberlane Regional School District deliberative session Thursday, February 4th at 7:03. My name is Steve Ranlett. I am the district moderator. First order of business, we're going to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could all rise, please.
Welcome to the deliberative session for Timberlane Regional School District. It's with great pleasure that I have Mr. DiBartolomeo here with School Board Representative Jordan Dottori and our select choir. Mr. DiBartolomeo, Jordan.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, select choir. Thank you, Jordan. Mr. DiBartolomeo, nobody does it better. Mr. Ranlett, all yours.
We're going to start. If I could have the school board and the budget committee, if you want to introduce yourself, please. We'll start with Sue down this end.
I'm Sue Sherman. I represent Plasto on the school board.
Go right down the row. Beautiful.
Hi, Jim O'Shaughnessy, the attorney for the school district.
George Stokinger, Business Administrator.
Dr. Metzler, Superintendent of Schools.
Dennis Heffernan, Plasto, Budget Committee Chairman.
Nancy Steenson, I represent Danville on the school board, and I'm currently the chair.
I'm Peter Bielo, and I'm Vice Chair and represent Plastow.
Joshua Horns, Danville, Vice Chair of the Budget Committee.
Donna Green, Sandown School Board.
Rick Blair, School Board, Plastow.
Greg Spiro, Atkinson School Board.
Tom Geary, Plastow, Budget Committee.
Michelle O'Neill, Danville, Budget Committee.
Julie Hammond, Atkinson Budget.
Kate Delfino from the Budget Committee for Atkinson.
Kelly Ward, Sandown School Board.
Jack Sapia, Atkinson School Board.
Lee Doobie, Sandown Budget Committee.
Thank you. Dr. Metzler, a few words.
Again, I'd like to thank people for coming out tonight. Appreciate the support. If you're interested in Wi-Fi, you go to your settings, go to TRSD guest. The password for this evening would be session. That'd be capital S-E-S-S-I-O-N. Also like to take this opportunity to thank both the school board and the budget committee. For many years, those two groups operated in a checks and balance kind of stovepipe. This year, spirit of collegiality, they worked together. Spent a great deal of time figuring out which items should end up as articles on the warrant and which items should be budgeted for. I believe what you have before you this evening is a very respectful budget to both the children of this district and the taxpayers in our 4 towns. So again, I want to thank you for coming out tonight and appreciate the support.
Thank you. I'm going to move on with the meeting of the rules. Big thing is if you could either turn your cell phones off or put them on vibrate, please. So that was the first rule. No smoking, turn off your cell phones or set them on vibrate. Each person will treat every other participant with courtesy and respect. Any voter who wishes to address the meeting will approach the microphone, be recognized by myself, the moderator, and will then state his or her name and address and spell your last name so that the clerk can get the notes correct. General comments will be limited to 3 minutes maximum. Presentations, if there are any, which I don't believe there are, will be given 10 minutes. Speakers shall remain at the microphone for answers to their questions. All questions to the school board, budget committee, or other officials or meeting participants will be directed through the moderator. Each voter who desires to speak on an article will be given a chance to do so before any other voter is given a second opportunity. Makers of motions and seconds will state their name for the district clerk. Only one amendment will be allowed on the floor at any one time. No amendment to an amendment will be allowed. Such proposals will be dealt with as subsequent amendments after the first amendment has been voted upon. Amendments must be written and signed by the voter along with their name printed and signed, please. Motions must be made in the affirmative. No negative motions will be allowed. If there are secret ballots, must be requested by 5 voters in writing and signed by those voters and be verified by the clerks of your respective towns and made before the vote on an article. Challenges to any voice vote requires 7 or more voters immediately after it is announced, who then may request a written ballot. The Municipal Budget Act is in effect, 10% limit. If needed be, it will be explained by either the school board chair or the district attorney. Reasonable discussion on both sides of a motion will be allowed before call the question, and it will be accepted by the moderator. A 2/3 vote is required for a call to question. Any amendment of financial amounts must be stated in dollars. Percentage figures must be converted to a dollar amount. Upon appeal of any ruling by the moderator, a majority vote will prevail. Robert's Rules of Orders are being used this evening as a guide and as a guide only. At any time during the meeting, these rules may be altered by a majority of the vote. I guess without objection from the floor, we'll adopt these rules for the conduct for this meeting this evening. There being none, those will be the rules. Thank you. I believe Mrs. Sherman has a list of non-registered voters that may be speaking this evening. Sue?
Mr. Moderator, I would like to put into motion to allow the following individuals be allowed to address the deliberative. Dr. Earl Metzler, Dr. Roseanne Wilson, George Stokinger, Attorney Jim O'Shaughnessy, Deb Armfield, Christy Michaud, Jeff Dowd, Beth Rincon, Susan Rassico, Michelle Ogier, Douglas Rolfe, Michael Hogan, John Holland, Angelo Fantasia, Tony DeBartolomeo, Jim Hughes, Barry Chuligan, Lou Broad, Ryan Richmond.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Jack. Any discussion? All those in favor to allow non-registered voters to speak signify by saying aye. Aye. Noes? Ayes have it. Thank you. Well, all that's done. We're going to jump right into the first session of the annual meeting. You are hereby notified to meet at the Timberlane High School, 36 Greeno Road, Plastow, New Hampshire, on Thursday, the 4th day of February 2016, 7 p.m. This session will consist of explanation discussion, and debate of warrant articles number 2 through 9. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. Warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote on the main motion as amended, and no warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. The second session of the annual meeting, that will be voting. Voting on warrant articles number 1 through 9 will be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with town meeting votes to be held on Tuesday, the 8th day of March, 2016, at your prospective polls in Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, and Sandown. Article 1 will be the elections of officers in your respective towns. They're up there. Well, here we go. Article 2, the operating budget. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $69,333,958. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $70,108,969, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Timberlane Regional School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with the RSA 40:13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, warrant Article 2, the operating budget, does not include appropriations proposed under any other warrant articles. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion to put that on the floor for discussion?
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion. Dennis Heffernan, Plastow.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Kate Delfino, Atkinson.
Thank you. And I believe, Dennis, you're going to be, if you want to read the intent and then your presentation.
Sure. I'll go right into the budget process. The budget process was developed through building level needs, review and recommendations of both the school board and the budget committee, public deliberation, which we're here to do tonight, and then the voting process. This is a needs-based budget request. Total 2015-2016 budget was $68,321,710. Administration request was an increase of 4.48%. Committee and board adjustments were a decrease of $2,050,808. Proposed budget is an increase of 1.48% for a total proposed budget for 2016-2017 of $69,333,958. Operating budget. 2016 proposed budget was $69,333,958. The budget for 2015-2016 was $68,321,710, with a change of 1.48%, an increase. This slide here shows your historical budget trends over the years, going back to 2011, 2012 to this current year. As you can see, for the most part, the budget has pretty much been level with the exception of 2 years, 2014-15 and 2013, 2014, and 2014-2015, where we saw an increase in the 3% range. The increase in the operating budget is in employee insurance, site and building projects, SAU, utilities, professional services, telephone, and communications. The decrease in the operating budget is in salaries, tuition, capital reserve, software, books and information services, equipment, bond interest, FICA, NHRS, supplies, for a decrease of $1,380,183. Change by major categories: salaries and benefits, $1,095,010. Instructional related, decrease of $568,617. Facilities related, increase of $375,241. Other, an increase of $110,614, for a total increase of $1,012,248. Salaries and benefits. You see a decrease with salaries, an increase in insurance, and a decrease in New Hampshire retirement, FICA, and an increase in work comp and unemployment. Instruction related. Decrease in tuition, special ed, vocational, equipment, professional services, books, softwares, and supplies. That was an increase in supplies. Facilities. Renovation and repairs, you see an increase. Supplies, a decrease. Utilities, an increase. Bond interest, a decrease, for a total of $375,241. Other. SAU 55, an increase of $242,419. Fund transfer, decrease, $249,999. Professional services, an increase of $71,466. Other, $46,728, for a total of $110,614. As you see here, the recommended budget of $69,333,958. Default budget, $70,108,969, for a decrease of $775,011, 1.1% decrease. Default budget, as used in this subdivision, means the amount of the same appropriations as contained in the operating budget authorized for the previous year, reduced and increased, as the case may be, by debt services, contracts, and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law, and reduced by one-time expenditures contained in the operating budget. For the purpose of this paragraph, one-time expenditures should be appropriations not likely to recur in the succeeding budget as determined by the governing body, unless the provision RSA 40:14-B are adopted of the local political subdivision. This slide shows you an estimated tax rate impact for the four towns: Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, and Sandown. The operating budget is recommended by the school board, 701, and recommended by the budget committee, 700. And I'd just like to take this moment to thank my fellow members on the budget committee for all their hard work in developing this budget, along with the school board and the administrators, who this year, as Dr. Metzler had said, we all work together to put forth a budget which we think is very manageable for the taxpayers of this district. Thank you. We'll take questions at this time on the budget.
Thank you, Dennis. As Dennis said, he'll take questions. Doing a great job. I'll open it up to the floor. We're going to discuss any questions, concerns, comments. If you do, please come up to the mic. Any comments on the operating budget? Yes,
Make
Donna.
a motion to,
Yep.
I'd just
Yes,
like-
Donna.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd just like to explain why I was the one abstention on this budget. Could we go back to the slide that shows the increase in the budget over the past 5 years, please? That's my slide number 15 in my package, the historical budget.
Can you turn her mic up so we can hear her, please? Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
this one,
That's right, thank you. So the actual percentage increase of the budget over the 5 years is 10%. And the enrollment during this time has gone down by 15%. If you divide the budget by the number of students we're educating, in the academic year 11-12, the budget per student was $15,216. With this budget in 16-17, the budget per student is going to be very close to $20,000. That's a 30% increase in the amount of money we're paying per student to educate a student. That's a 30% increase in 5 years. So I could not in conscience vote to approve this budget, and I couldn't vote against it because that would be as much as saying that the default budget should prevail. And as you can see, the default budget is larger than this proposed budget, and I have an issue with the default budget because I feel that one-time expenditures, which should have been removed, were not removed. So that's why I abstained. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Belo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
You're welcome.
I'd just like to point out that while Mrs. Green is correct that the number of students has gone down over the last 5 or 6 years, unfortunately, the rates for employee health insurance that we're charged have nothing to do with how many students we have in the schools. So while we see that salaries are going down because the number of staff members are going down, the insurance line is going up quite dramatically because of the insurance companies, and they're just not amenable to charge on a per student basis.
Thank you. Dennis, hold on. Mr. Green.
all right, I just wanted to address what Donna was bringing up.
You will.
Okay.
Are you, okay, you're going to yield your time?
Okay.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Thank you. That is something that we did take into account as a budget committee. Each budget that we look at does have the enrollment numbers for each school. And we looked at the total number for this year for all the elementary schools, the high school, and the middle school. We took into account a decrease of 64 students.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns, discussion? Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. 2 years ago, at the deliberative session, Mrs. Green and I came here and made the case $64 million was enough. It was enough 2 years ago. And of course, that fell flat. It was voted down. Interestingly, the voters defeated the proposed budget and instituted the default budget that year. And as it turns out, we now know that the actual expenditure that year was well under $64 million. In fact, $64 million was more than enough. It was more than enough without layoffs. It was more than enough without fees for athletics and fees for music programs and draconian cutbacks. $64 million was enough. We came here last year and recommended what we described as a responsible budget of $65 million. Of course, that went down to defeat as well. Many of us here today were here then as well. I've come to the microphone not intending to make a motion today, but to say that how much is enough? Well, if you take last year's responsible budget of $65 million and you add in everything that the district has asked to add to the budget this year, about $1 million, and you add to it the roughly $100,000 that the support workers won by warrant article last year, and you deduct $80,000 in legal fees that the district shouldn't be trusted with. What you come up with in the end is a budget of $66 million. This year, $66 million is enough. Now, I don't want to drag this assembly through a meaningless exercise, but I wanted to put it out that we saw the evidence in the year that just ended last June that this district has generous resources, even as the enrollment continues to drop, as Mrs. Green said from the stage. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Ward.
In light of what Mr. Green has just said about stuff recurring and stuff that happened last year and stuff that's happening again this year, it seems that some things are repeating themselves. So in light of that, I would like to make a motion to increase the operating budget by $50,000 for a new total of $69,383,958. And my intent behind that, even though I cannot earmark the money,
Okay, hold on. A motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second, Lee Doobie Sandown.
my intent behind that.
Hold on a minute.
Sorry.
You're going to get there. Motion's been made on the operating budget. Move to increase the operating budget by $50,000 for a new total of $69,383,958. It was seconded. It's on the floor for discussion now.
Okay, thank
Mr. Ward.
My intent behind that would be to use that money in order to ascertain the exact cost of a buyout if Sandown was to withdraw from the district. I feel it would be prudent and fair to all the towns involved to know exactly what they were up against, how much it would cost, whether it's $0, $100, or millions of dollars. I'm not stating that any one number is correct. I'm stating that we should spend this money wisely to find out an accurate number so that we all know where we stand.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? The motion to increase the operating budget by $50,000.
Kim Farah from Danville. I'd like
Thank
to
you,
ask the moderator where the amount of $50,000 came from and what is the justification for that amount?
Mr. Wood?
Last year we talked about a $30,000 number. I can only see that going up, so I feel it's good to budget $50,000. That number came from my head.
Can I ask the moderator where the $30,000 number came from that Mr. Ward just mentioned?
I don't know where it came from, Kelly, so I guess you'll have to answer. Sorry.
That's okay. It was a number that we discussed. I think Rob could help out with that number.
Mr. Collins. Sure. Mr. Sapia, you'll be next.
Last year, it was recommended to the board that we put aside $30,000 for the consultant to look back to 1965 for the town of Sandown. It was an up-to figure. We figured we wouldn't get to that amount, or we were hoping we wouldn't get to that amount. But if we did, or if we didn't, we would have less money, obviously, but we'd have the amount put aside needed. So we look at the cost of getting the buyout number for Sandown. We also believe that if we do get a buyout number for Sandown, based on the posturing that's happened within the town of Sandown by certain individuals, that we will end up in court because whatever we come up with for a buyout number will be contested. So if you add in the amount that we need to get that buyout number, the amount that we need to defend that buyout number, the amount that we'll need to, if withdrawal goes through, the town of Sandown, I really don't, and I won't speculate, but I think the barriers for withdrawal for Sandown would be much lower, personally. I think the road to withdrawal would be much easier because it's now known what withdrawal is. So if the town votes to do it, the unknowns aren't there. So that we had before. So there's a process with that we never completed last time. We never got to that point that we will work through, and it's going to cost money. So I think, honestly, $50,000, I hope we don't spend that much money, but I think that would cover it.
Thank you,
Could I ask
Mr. Collins.
Could I ask the moderator what the rate was for the consultant that was hired for the previous study?
Yeah, then we're going to be
Because
talking
it-
about the $50,000 on the motion. I'm not
It
going to.
speaks to the cost of $50,000 directly.
I'll let this one go. Go ahead. Does somebody have that answer?
Sure.
Mr. Collins.
Yeah, the rate was going to be about $100 per hour. We don't know what the rate will be moving forward, but that's what the rate would have been.
And that was in the contractual agreement with this consultant?
No, there was no contractual agreement with the consultant.
There was no
Okay.
consultant hired?
The motion on the floor is to raise the operating budget by $50,000. Let's talk about the raising it $50,000. I'm not going to talk about the contract from last year.
That's fine.
Okay.
I disagree with that motion. My concern is that we're looking at an increase of the operating budget. The default budget is higher than the operating budget. We have a 3-year TTA collective bargaining agreement that's coming into the mix here that represents about a 1% increase to the overall budget on top of the 1.6% budget for next year, and could subsequently increase in the following 2 years. I want those teachers to get a raise. I'm very concerned that this budget, even though it represents only 1.5% increase, will probably be voted down very strongly in Danville, because typically Danville, speaking as a resident of that town and a selectman, will get hit much, much harder than 1.5%. Even in this last budget season, Danville was the only town that saw an increase in their budget. Last time we had a 1.9% increase in the overall operating budget of the school. The Danville tax rate increased by almost 7%. I will come back and make a motion on the budget in hopes to reduce this operating budget so that the teachers will get their contract passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Jack.
Yeah, I sat on the withdrawal committee with Kelly and with Rob and with Mr. Grosky, and this all came about. There are 4 towns. 2 towns over the years have paid a large sum over that 50-year period, a large sum of the money into the process of running the district. As part of the process, on the very first meeting that we had, the withdrawal committee, it was said that the fight is going to be over the buyout.
Okay, Jack,
okay.
the motion's $50,000 on the floor.
My point is that to be fair to the other towns, we decided, I'm talking about where the $30,000 came from.
We're talking about the $50,000 on the motion.
I'm going to get there if you'd be patient with me,
Get it
Mr.
there really
Moderator.
quick.
So, anyways, to get to the point, what we want is an accurate number, we want a fair number, and we want an unbiased number. And that's only to be fair to the other. Personally, I hope it never comes to that. I hope withdrawal gets shot down, and I hope we stay together as a district. But in case this goes through, I don't think that it should come out of the operating budget. I think it should be added on, and it's a true cost of finding out what is a fair, accurate, and independent number, and potentially keep us even out of court, because there would be a number, and it would be better for the Sandown residents to know what that number would be. So that's where this number's come from, and there's no straight number because we don't know how long it's going to take to get that number. It's got to go back 50 years, and I think the towns of Atkinson, Danville, and Plastow should get everything that's coming to them. Should withdrawal happen.
Thank you. Jason Gorosky.
Jason Gorosky, Town of Atkinson. This is another example of how the talk of withdrawal out of the town of Sandown, that absolutely nothing is free here, despite the attempts to make it sound like we're operating and nothing's at any cost to anybody. I was among the 4 selectmen and the 4 school board members who served on the Sandown Withdrawal Feasibility Study Committee, which decided it was not feasible and suitable for Sandown to withdraw. I am reluctantly in favor of this. I wish it was done already, and it's unfortunate that it's not. However, I think it's important.
If I could ask, are you in favor of the $50,000?
Correct.
Thank you.
I think it's important for the town of Sandown to understand what the true cost is, and I think it is owed to the residents of Atkinson, Danville, and Plastow to get that number corrected and get it straight. And in the event that does not survive, the voters here tonight does not survive on election day, it's my hope that the school board will find money in the budget to get this done regardless. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to draw a line. We're not here to talk about Sandown withdrawing. We're not talking about a feasibility study. We're talking about the motion is $50,000 to add to the bottom line operating budget. That's the motion on the floor.
To Dr. Farr's point.
Hold on, Mr. Green. Rick Blair.
I cannot, in good conscience, vote for this amendment. We have a $69 million budget, which typically operates at a surplus of $2 million. I feel that if we need to spend this money, and we don't know if we need to spend this money until the votes are in from the town of Sandown, adding it to the budget right now is superfluous. This is money that could easily be buried and found in the operating budget that we currently have. And frankly, unless we need to spend it, putting it on the budget right now just seems unnecessary.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Hold on. You're adding the motions to add $50,000 to the operating budget. It's not earmarking it for anything. You're just adding $50,000 to the bottom line operating budget, just to be clear. Mr. Green, if you have something on the motion on the $50,000 motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
You're welcome.
I came to speak against the amendment.
Okay.
Mr. Blair's remarks have made my remarks almost superfluous, and I thank you, Mr. Blair. I would second everything you said. I would just add this to Dr. Farr's remarks. The increased assessment to the town of Danville in the document distributed for this session shows.
Unfortunately, we're not
me.
talking about, now, Mr. Green,
Excuse
we're not
me.
talking about assessments. We're talking about either
about-
for or against
we're talk-
$50,000.
yes.
Okay. Unless you have something new, I'm going to move it.
We're going to be adding 8.5% to the amount that Danville taxpayers have to come up with.
Okay, I'm gonna move it on.
That's in.
Mr. Heffernan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As a budget committee, we worked extremely hard on this budget to come in at where we did. So I am against adding anything to this budget. I feel as a budget committee and as a school board, we worked extremely hard to keep this budget at a reasonable amount. So I am against this amendment.
Thank you. Anything new on the motion to add $50,000 to the operating budget?
Robert Sukas, Plastow. I'm against this $50,000. I think it is premature. Sandown, I don't think anybody has any idea what you do if you are going to pull out of this school system. So I think to earmark $50,000 extra for if we decide to, if we get a study. Sandown is nowhere near ready to pull out. So I think
Okay, we're not talking about Sandown pulling out.
I'm talking
We're
about 50,000. I think is a little premature. I think it's a little early for us to put it in the budget. Come back with something concrete, and maybe 50,000 will get in next year.
Thank you. Anything new on the $50,000 motion?
I'm in favor of this motion simply because, as Dennis pointed out, the Budget Committee worked very hard to put together a responsible budget, and the funds are strategically allocated to certain expenditures. Everyone knows that Sandown has Warrant Article 13, which is to begin actions to withdraw from the district. It would be prudent for the district to allocate $50,000 in the event of legal action. It is an insurance policy that I trust the administration would administer well and in good conscience on our behalf.
Thank you. Anything new on adding $50,000 to the operating budget? That's the motion we're here for. Mrs. Green, hold on 1 minute. Yes, sir.
Karsten Springer, Danville. I would simply like to ask our budget member, Josh, if he's in favor or opposed to this amendment.
You don't have to answer them if you don't want to.
Out of respect to Mr. Springer, I'll answer it. I'm against it. And the reason is that we have $69.3 million. And as Mr. Blair mentioned, we do usually carry a surplus of around $2 million, although that's not guaranteed. And I believe maybe 1.6 was mentioned in one of the documents that I saw earlier this year. So I think the $1.6 million, we might be able to find, if it's $50,000, the money for that. And if we don't have $50,000, for some reason we are razor thin in what we spend versus what we've appropriated, then there is a reserve fund for emergencies in the case that this becomes an emergency. So,
Thank you. Nancy.
Thank you. I have a question I'd like to ask of Mr. Heffernan or Mr. Ward or whoever feels that they can address this question. Just to clarify the process, it's my understanding the Budget Committee put together a very specific budget based on specific needs, departmental, by school, et cetera. After that fact, the town of Sandown has a warrant article that is unfunded, so that if it were to pass, someone would have to pay to find out the buyout number. That's my understanding, and that's my understanding, the intent. So I just want to clarify from my understanding, as well as everyone else in this room, that although the Budget Committee did a wonderful job, line by line, spent months putting together a budget, subsequent to that, there was an unfunded warrant article by the town of Danville, and that is the concern and the reason for the $50,000. If someone could clarify that, because if I'm incorrect, I would like to know, and I'm sure other people would as well.
Thank you. Is there anything new on the motion to add $50,000 to the operating budget? Something new? Mrs. Green, go ahead.
So I've heard that this is to research the buyout number or to pay for a court battle.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt. If somebody has something new, we're not talking about court battles, we're not talking about withdrawals, we're not talking about feasibility studies. We're
Mr.
talking about
Moderator.
adding, hold on a minute. We're talking about adding $50,000 to the operating budget. That's the motion that's on the floor. If we have something new, please come up to the mic. If not, I'm going to move the motion.
Kim Farrell
Yes,
from
Kim.
Danville. What I want to add new is, and I was a member of the Withdrawal Feasibility Study Committee, Danville Selectman Rep, is that based on my findings, the total amount spent in direct costs, that would be for the consultant on the buyout and legal fees, was under $10,000. I want to add that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything new on the motion to add $50,000 to the operating budget? Mr. Collins, please let it be new.
Yeah, no.
Get ready with that button for the mic. Go ahead.
Are you all set?
Go ahead.
Okay. Mrs. Steenson asked a question. I just wanted to confirm that what she was saying is absolutely true.
Thank you. Okay, the motion on the floor is to add $50,000 to the operating budget. With there being nothing else, all those in favor of the motion to add $50,000 to the operating budget signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed to adding $50,000 to the operating budget signify by saying no. No. Any abstentions? I rule noes have it. The operating budget, Article number 2, is, shall voters vote to Timberlane Regional School District to raise and appropriate as operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately. So the amount is $69,333,958. Yeah, 69 million. Any other discussion on the operating budget? Any?
I appreciate the work that both the Budget Committee and the school board has done on this budget and trying to reflect a lower budget. I also look at what our surpluses have been running for the last several years. I would like to make a motion to reduce the budget to a flat $69 million.
Okay, to a motion, you can approach the clerk's table on a green piece of paper, write your motion, sign it, print it. So your motion is going to be to reduce the operating budget by $333,958. Is that correct, Kim? Okay. You will in a minute. Thank you. Is there a second on the motion? Second by Mr. O'Neill. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to reduce the operating budget by $333,958. I'll open it up to the floor. Yes, Kim.
Again, and I spoke to this previously, my rationale is I am concerned about this TTA contract being passed, about the tax increases in the towns, mainly, I'll speak only for my own town in Danville. I feel that the surplus has been enough where this could be absorbed should there be some overages in the budget. I've looked at 5 years expenditures versus what's budgeted, and I just feel that there's money, as Mr. Horn said, should there be some emergency. I realize that towns operate a little bit differently, but I feel that this, reducing by this amount would hopefully not be detrimental to the district, but at the same time would hopefully give a chance for the TTA contract to pass.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the motion? The motion is to reduce the operating budget by $333,958. Just on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Lou Broad. I currently serve as the president of the TTA.
Lou, could you spell your last name, please?
B-R-O-A-D. And I currently serve as president of the TTA. While we understand the gesture of this, the reality is it's a bottom line budget. If money comes out of that budget, chances are that it's going to cost positions. And so I would ask you not to support this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any other any other discussion on the motion to reduce it by $333,958? Yes, Mr. Green.
Thank you. To the gentleman from the Teachers Association, I regret to say that over the last 9 years, as Timberlane's enrollment as a district has dropped from mid-4,600s to now, looking at next year, something like the mid-3,500s. With all that decrease in enrollment, about a quarter of the enrollment has disappeared over that period. Yet the overall staffing of the district is close to what it was. It's been around 700 staff, not teachers, but staff, full-time equivalent, And it's now about 675, 677. So the staffing has dropped by about 20 odd staff, while enrollment has dropped by a quarter, about 1,000 students. So this district hasn't yet realized the fiscal reality that it's dealing with. It hasn't yet realized the impact on the tax-paying communities, and inevitably it will have to recognize that. The $330,000 that Dr. Farah has moved to reduce is a very, very modest contribution toward recognizing that reality. And I know that much more is possible and much more is necessary, but I will certainly support what Dr. Farah has moved.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Comments for or against the motion to reduce the budget by $333,958?
Mary Ann Springer, Danville. Is it appropriate to ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. What I would like to ask is, in light of Dr. Farah's comment about the $2 million surplus year to year and the amount of $333,000, and the comment from the Teachers Association that would inevitably mean cutting positions, I'd like to ask somebody from the school department to answer that. Is it true that it would inevitably cost teaching positions, or are there other ways to accommodate a decrease like this with what tends to be a historical surplus?
I guess I'm going to ask Dr. Metzler if...
That reduction would be 6 teaching positions.
Thank you.
Repeat? Thank you. We didn't hear it.
Didn't hear it. Let me get Mrs. Sherman, then I'll come down to Mrs. Green, and then...
We didn't hear the comment.
That reduction would be approximately 6 teaching positions. Currently, we're scheduled for a reduction of 21, I believe, 0.6, and that would bring it to 27.6 to make that number work.
Thank you. Mrs. Sherman.
Or desperately needed repairs and renovations to a crumbling infrastructure that really doesn't have as much to do with how many students we drop this year, but to maintain our facilities, we could take the money out of that as well. That's a big chunk out of repairs and renovations that we have put off and put off and put off. I am not in favor of cutting this budget.
Thank you. Mrs. Green.
Thank you. Every year, the district forecasts what its surplus is going to be, and this budget's surplus forecast is $1.6 million. So that is a structural surplus that is built into this budget. It is absolutely false that cutting $333,000 will result in job loss. If it did, I would say that's a good thing, because our enrollment is down 21% and the staff enrollment is down 3% in that same time. We need to lose some staff, but unfortunately, $333,000 in all truth will just come out of the surplus.
Thank you.
I just want to add to the discussion that in this year's budget, which the Budget Committee did examine carefully, when our individual department heads came and made presentations to us, those budgets, they had gone over them very carefully. They were down over $400,000. They made a number of cuts to the requests that they were making. So that is already, I would say very, very modest. Secondly, this budget already contains a loss in raw numbers of over 21 full-time equivalent staff. I believe that the NASDAQ enrollment projections are that enrollment will decrease by it's something 140, 145 students. That's one less staff for about every 7 students that we're losing next year. We can't afford to lose any more staff right now. If you look at our staffing numbers, we have been losing staff over the years as our enrollment goes down. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all of the other costs decrease proportionally. So This type of a cut concerns me because I would be afraid that it would result in a staff position, and any other staff position could affect programs. And I want those programs to stay there for our students. Second of all, we've put off over the years some very needed repairs to this very section of the building you're sitting in. And if we continue to put off necessary repairs like that, it not only poses a hazard and impacts the quality of the educational experience for our students, but it's going to increase the costs down the line. So I'm very much against this cut, and I would urge others to vote against it as well.
Thank you. And for or against the $333,000. The motion on the floor is to reduce the budget by $333,958.
Chris True, Sandown, TRUE. I have a procedural question for the moderator. Would he consider asking everyone to use their voting cards instead of just a straight voice vote? A no by somebody not holding a card is just as loud as a no by somebody holding a card. Thank you.
I'll take that into consideration. Thank you. Something new.
Karsten Springer, Danville. Would the secretary please read back, so that I am dead certain what I'm going to say, the response that Dr. Metzler made to the question from Mary Ann Springer?
I believe Dr. Metzler, if we don't have to read the minutes, we can ask him. I think he said 6 teachers.
6 teachers, that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to be sure it wasn't just staff members. Okay, so my question then will be, in the end here, directed at Dr. Metzler. But responding to what the woman said just a moment ago, I'm sorry I missed your name. If we have...
Kate Delfino.
Kate, thank you very much. Kate, if we have expenditures to roofs and things like that that are required, I would truly hope, with all the diligence that our committees have put into this, that they have included that under capital repair programs, et cetera. If they're not there, then somebody has not done their job, and I doubt that's the case. So I'm not terribly concerned of that particular objection to this request. Dr. Metzler, this question directed to you. I am particularly concerned that when that question was asked, your response was categorically, it would mean 6 teachers were being cut. Would you please clarify for us why you went to the teaching staff when we have such an overload of administrative costs in the structure of our school? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Springer. Taking a look at the budget and taking a look at where we would have to make reductions, I know when we talk about surplus, you know, $1.6 million, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money in a $70 million budget, $69 million budget. If you do the percentages, you'll see, and that's really the protection, that's really what they have. You know, you're asking our business administrator to budget 18 months out. Now, that being said, what we hope for in the spring, we're hoping even the 21.6 may not happen. We're hoping that the greatest maximum rate, the GMR that you hear about with that huge health insurance increase, we're hoping that that comes back in a favorable rate so that we can restore teaching positions, not necessarily cut teaching positions. You know, we spent a great deal of time with the budget committee. I'm telling you, at 69.3, you know, we brought back a considerable surplus last year. We froze lines. We went without an awful lot. This is a conservative budget. This is a budget that I believe is what we need. And so, you know, as we looked and he said, what would it mean? That's what it would look like today. Would it look like that in April and May? Perhaps not, but we'd have to see when those other lines come in.
Thank you, Dr. Metzler. Any other further discussion on the motion to reduce?
I'd like to direct my question to the moderator. There was a comment regarding the repairs, which I think are to the mini gym, which reflect quite a lot of this capital maintenance. Is that over $300,000?
No, I'm going to. The motion on the floor is to reduce the operating budget by $333,000. It's a bottom line operating budget.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with where it's going to go. That's up to the administration, superintendent of schools. The motion on the floor is to reduce the budget. We know what the motion is. Anything else on the motion?
Okay. Let me add this to the motion then. I'm a member of the capital improvement.
You can't add anything else to it?
I don't mean that. Discussion. I know there's maintenance that was added to the budget for, please bear with me. Please
I'll
bear
give you a
with-
little
I-
leeway,
I
and
have
then I'm
3
going
minutes.
to move the question if there's
All right.
nothing new.
My concern on this deferred maintenance is we have a capital improvement plan that's coming forward, that could potentially impact the fact that we could perhaps be moving towards new buildings or new facilities, and to put several $100,000 towards that is...
I understand. The
is
motion on the
short-sighted in my
floor
mind.
is to reduce the budget by $333,958. If you have something new to either go up or down, or on the motion, I'll allow it. If not, I'm going to move the question myself. Yes, sir.
Phil Sherwood, Atkinson, I rise in opposition to the amendment to reduce the budget by $333,000. The proponent of the amendment also said she'd like to see the teachers get a raise. You can't on one hand say the teachers should get a raise, and on the other hand, we should pay for teachers' salaries out of surplus. That's not how we should budget. And secondly, there's been a lot made about staff size and the decrease in population within the school district. If your class size goes from 25 to 23, you don't get to lay off a teacher. That's not how it works. You don't have less school buses. You still
Thank
have
you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Collins and then Mr. Springer, is it? If you have something new, I'll let you speak. If not, I'm going to move the question. Mr. Collins.
Sure. I just wanted to point out, just to drive home the fact that employee insurance alone this year is up $1.6 million. That's a 2.3% increase over the previous year budget in that budget line alone. If you take away that increase, we actually dropped the budget. The budget committee dropped the budget more than $500,000. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Something new on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. That answers the question, part of what we asked before. Dr. Metzler, it has been pointed out to me by a few people, you did
Sir?
did not answer my question.
Okay.
Why did you?
Excuse me. I'm not. Well, I'm going to move the question. No, because the motion on the floor...
The teachers are being cut before anybody else.
I understand, but the motion on the floor is to reduce the budget by $333,958. Is there any other discussion on the motion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion to reduce the budget by $333,958 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against reducing the budget signified by saying, well, no. No. Okay. To appease Mr. True, I'm going to do a voter card. So all those in favor of the motion to reduce the budget by $333,958, raise your voter card that you received from your... Okay. Norm, I don't think we need to count them. All those opposed to reduce the budget, the motion fails. We're back to the original operating budget. I guess I'll forego reading the whole thing. The original operating budget is $69,333,958. Should that fail, the operating budget shall be $70,108,969. Is there any further discussion on the operating budget? There being none, the operating budget will appear on your ballot as is. Moving on. Article. Yes, Dr. Metzler.
I just wanted to Mr. Springer's point, and I apologize if you didn't feel like I answered the question, and maybe I didn't answer the question. I apologize if that's the case. I just wanted to I wanted you to understand the budget strategy, and this is to Article 2. The Budget Committee came back. They basically said you have $70 million. Come back with a budget of $70 million. That was with cuts. We reduced to 69.3 to make room for the teacher's contract.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Metzler. I appreciate that. But we're going to move on to Article number 3.
Mr. Moderator, Louise Pajak, Sandown. I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration on Article 2.
Motion been made to reconstrict. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Collins. There's no discussion on reconstrict. All those in favor to reconstrict on Article number 2 signify by saying aye. Aye. Restrict reconsideration. Thank you, Sue. All those against it signify by saying no. Ayes have it. Article number 3, Capital Reserve Fund. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate up to $250,000 to to be placed in the school building construction, reconstruction, capital improvement, and land purchase capital reserve fund established in 1996, with such amounts to be transferred from those funds in June 30th, 2016, unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st of this year, which were apportioned as capital expenses in 2015, 2016, in accordance with Article 6 of the Timberlane Regional School District Articles of Agreement. No amount to be raised by taxation. Majority vote required. Is there a motion to put that on the floor? Mr. Collins, is there a second? Second by Jack. I believe you're going to read the intent in a brief presentation.
The statement of intent with this article puts money aside for future capital improvements. Money is only put into the capital reserve fund if it is available at the end of the fiscal year. Capital expense appropriations are calculated in accordance with the Timberlane Regional School District Articles of Agreement, Article 6, apportionment formula as follows. Quote, the capital expenses of the Timberlane Regional School District payable in each fiscal year shall be apportioned on the equalized valuation as most currently available as determined by the State Tax Commission, end quote.
Thank you. I'll put it on the floor for discussion. Article number 3. Yes, Mrs. Green.
Thank you. I want people to understand that the $250,000 comes out of money that hasn't been spent in this case on capital improvements in the district. So if I don't think it's a good idea. We have a lot of money in our capital reserve fund right now. We have a great deal of money in our fund balance retention fund. We don't need this money, and we shouldn't be encouraging the current administration of this budget to not fully spend the money that we've currently budgeted for capital improvements in the district right now. So I'm not in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to point out that this warrant article, the last sentence reads, no amount to be raised by taxation. What that means is the $250,000 isn't added to the appropriation that becomes part of the calculation of next year's tax. However, by taking this money from what otherwise would have been surplus, it takes money that otherwise would have offset the tax calculation for the future year, so that the impact of this warrant article is exactly the same as adding it to the appropriation and putting it on the next year's taxes. The tax impact of the budget that is moving forward to the ballot is already going to be very heavy this year. I think it would be a mistake to increase the tax burden this year by another $250,000.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Hammond.
Dave Hammond, Atkinson, New Hampshire. I just have a question. It was just stated that there's a lot of money in the long-term capital improvement fund. My question is, what's the current balance? Thank you.
Yes, George. I'm not going to answer that.
There's currently $863,000 in the capital reserve fund.
Did everybody hear that? I didn't. Could you say that, George, again?
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. There's currently $863,000 in the capital reserve fund.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Collins.
Yeah, so I just want to point out the fact that we have a CIP committee now that's going to be actively collecting projects from around the district starting soon, March, to create a capital improvement plan. Part of that capital improvement plan will include the amount of money that's in this fund to possibly use in future years. We can't touch this money unless it goes out to a vote. So it would mean future warrant articles for the 4 towns to vote on. So while I understand this is a large sum of money and $250,000, I also think we have a lot of capital projects that need to be addressed over the years. And essentially what this does is it puts money away a little bit at a time so that when we do need to do a major capital project, we can use that money towards it, and it hits the taxpayers less than if we had tried to do it all at once.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? Article number 3. Something new, Mr. Hammond? Approach the mic.
Dave Hammond, Atkinson. I just want to make a comment in terms of that number, although it may sound like a large number, is really very small in terms of the maintenance. I don't use the term maintenance, but the capital improvements that are really needed in the facilities that is a bill that is long overdue. A lot of improvements really need to be made that haven't been done, and what's happened is we've deferred paying this bill. And a lot of times what's happening now, is my understanding, is emergency repairs have to be done, which end up costing us a lot more money than if they were planned out and money was put in a long-term capital improvement fund so that these things could be handled appropriately over time. So it's costing us more in the long run to have to pay for emergency repairs as opposed to planning, putting money aside, and doing this in an organized fashion.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Sapia.
It pains you.
I know.
It pains you.
Something new on the article number 3.
Just want to concur with the last couple speakers said, but once again, if you have this money there, what it does is it levels out any potential great impact you may get in one particular year. It offsets that. We do that in Atkinson. We do it quite well. And if you don't want to see a major bump in your taxes, this is a prudent way to save money. And I can tell you, from someone that was in the construction industry for years, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around here. And the longer you put it off, the more it's going to cost you.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? There being none, Article 3.
Mr. Moderator, I have one. Thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Green,
Thank
on Article
you.
number 3.
There is a change in this warrant article from previous years that I don't think is being quite comprehended. In previous years, we took money out of the surplus and we put it into the capital reserve fund. This warrant article is saying that the money, this $250,000, is coming out of the capital expense surplus. So that means that this money is not coming out of the general fund surplus. It's coming out of specifically line items that were designated for capital improvement in the district. So that means that we may have budgeted to fix the insulation in the walls or put new lighting or change the flooring, and it wasn't done, and there's a surplus in the capital improvement lines in our budget. And that's where this $250,000 would be coming from. So although Mr. Hammond's remarks are perfectly correct, and it's a good thing to have money in reserve for capital improvements, what this is making a pauper of Paul to feed Peter, in a way. So you don't really want to be putting yourself on a diet of your capital improvements through the operating budget through the year to put money into the capital reserve fund. You want to be spending it all as you have budgeted it. So this warrant article is completely different from what has been put before you in the past. So I just want people to understand that point.
Thank you. Mr. Collins?
Yeah, just a quick, I think I inferred from what you said, Mrs. Green, that we might not actually do projects that need to get done to use money to put into the capital reserve fund, but I don't anticipate that happening. In fact, often what happens is we budget for certain projects and certain things coming up 18 months before we actually do them, and oftentimes we have money left over because we budgeted a little bit too much, and bids come in lower, so that creates a surplus that we can then put into the capital reserve fund.
Thank you. Anything new on Article number 3? Mr. Blair.
So it's important to look at the first line, and it says up to $250,000. If the surplus in the capital expenditure line is only $103,000 at the end of the year, only $103,000, or what's remaining in surplus, will be put into the capital reserve fund. We're not going to find a way to get that other $147,000. So it's only what is left in surplus up to $250,000 that gets transferred. So the tax impact may be nothing if we end up spending the full budgeted amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Any? No? Kim?
What is the total amount in the 2015-16 capital expense line from which this would be drawn should it not be expended? Mr. Moderator, sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at George because I don't have that answer.
I'll have to look it up.
Roughly, I don't need.
Give me a moment.
I don't need
I'll look it up. It's somewhere in the vicinity of $4 million.
Okay, that's fine.
But
I don't
from
need it
that
exact.
Comes the principal and interest payment on the bond,
Which is probably
which
around
is
$1 million.
a little under $2 million.
$2 million. Okay.
The rest of it is equipment and capital projects and the like.
So there's about $2 million that's really in play. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment on Article number 3 to raise an appropriate up to $250,000? There being none, Article 3 will appear on the ballot as is.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 3.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Kate Delfino.
Kate, thank you. Okay, it's non-debatable. All those in favor of restricting signify by saying aye. Aye. No? Ayes have it. Article number 4, 3-year collective bargaining agreement, TTA. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberlane Teachers Association and the Timberlane Regional School Board, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Fiscal year 16 and 17, the estimated increase, $611,032. 17-18, $633,573. 18-19, $724,684. 3-year total, $1,969,289. Further to raise and appropriate the sum of $611,032 for the 2016-17 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over these that would be paid at the current staffing level. Majority vote is required. Is there a motion to put that on the floor? Motion by Sue Sherman. Is there a second? Second by Jack Sapia. Sue, I believe you're going to read the intent and also a brief. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The intent of this article should be up on the screen, thank you. The intent, article will allow the school district to enter into a successor 3-year contract with the Timberlane Teachers Association. The proposed contract ratified by the union and the school board represents a 3% increase in salary and a $210,000 cost savings in insurance for year 1, a 2.3 increase in salaries in year 2, and a 2.5 increase in salaries in year 3. That's the intent statement that will appear on the ballot. If I could have the next slide. Just to give you a little bit of information about the summary of changes, this chart shows salaries for each of the 3 years. We have a step system here, so 16, 17, steps 1 through 14 would have a 0.75% increase. And the step increase for step 15, which is the top of our system, would be a 2% increase. In 17, 18, steps 1 through 14 would receive a 0.5% increase, and step 15, again the top, would receive a 1.0% increase. In 18, 19, steps 1 through 14, a 0.5%, and step 15, a 1.5% increase. Some of the other changes in the sick bank maximum was increased from 600 days to 1,000 days. Some additional changes were in the language that addresses requirements and mandates of the Affordable Care Act, incorporating online learning blizzard bag days, provisions, clarifications to credit and course reimbursement allocations, and permitting the superintendent to hire candidates up to 2 steps higher for positions designated as critical shortage areas in an effort to secure qualified, experienced teachers.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Moderator?
Yes?
In addition, I wanted to, if I could have a little leeway, Mr. Moderator, thank the chair of the school board negotiating team, Mr. Rick Blair from Plastow. He is not running for re-election. We will miss him desperately. I think he deserves a round of applause. Thank you, Rick, for all you have done. Do you have any, Mr. Moderator, would you mind my turning over my part of the time to Mr. Blair if he has any additional comments about the work he did?
No, I do not. Mr. Blair, if you'd like to say a few words.
So I know from the general public, if you're looking at the step charts, it may seem a little unfair that people from step 1 through 14 seem to be getting less of a raise. I want to put you at ease that typically someone who does their job well will transition from one step to the next in addition to getting that raise that was demonstrated by Mrs. Sherman. The average is approximately 3.6% an increase in salary to move up the steps. So someone who is on steps 1 through 14 typically will increase their rate by 3.6 plus the amount that was shown in that table. That's how we end up showing average salary increases of approximately 3% for the first year and the other figures that Sue had mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Open it up for the floor for discussion only. Article 4 is not amendable because it is a collective bargain agreement, but I will open it up to the floor for discussion. Yes, Mrs. Green.
Thank you. I do have a question because the material presented at public hearing is a little bit different from the material presented here, and I just wanted to clear that up. At public hearing, in addition to the changes that Mrs. Sherman mentioned, there was the increase of $5 a day for unused sick day redemptions, and I don't see that mentioned here. I'd like to know what the status of that is.
Yes, Mr. Blair.
I can speak to that. When the new contract was drafted, it shows a change in this area, and the dollar figures are up by $5. However, if you go back to the original contract, there was a stipulation that for the third year of the current contract, those dollar values actually increased at that point in time, and hence for the new contract, there actually is no increase. It is status quo from the previous contract, but only from the last year of the previous contract.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Any other comment? Yes, Jack.
I'm in favor of this article. I would just like to, at this point, thank the teachers. They're the backbone of this district. And I'd like to thank you for all the work you do and what you do with our kids. I've had 2 kids go through this district, and they're better people because of it. So for the people that work with the teachers, the staff, especially those people that I don't think some people realize, teachers are staying here 2-3 hours after school to work with the kids, gratis. Those are things that typically don't get measured in these types of conversations and dialogues. So thank you very much for what you do from the bottom of my heart.
Yes, Mrs. Green.
Thank you. I'm not quite clear on the answer that I received. So is it the case that the new contract represents a $5 per sick day redemption increase or not?
It does not. The increase actually occurred in this current contract at the third year of the current contract.
So just to be clear, I was told at public hearing that this was the case in the new contract, just to be clear. So now I understand that that wasn't correct.
Okay. Anything new on Article number 4?
Kate Sherman DeRoche, Plastow, New Hampshire. Mr. Sapia beat me to it, but I was raised by a Timberlane teacher. I work with Timberlane teachers every day. My children are educated by Timberlane teachers, and I just want to say thank you to all of them that are here supporting this. They're here because they support and love this district, and they're dedicated to their job, so thank you to them all, and I hope everybody will consider voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Dennis.
And I will say, being educated in this district and looking out here and seeing many people who have come up to the mic this evening who have been educated in this district, that you can see, in most cases, it's turned out some quality people out there. So I hope that you will support this article.
They're being, go ahead. I'm trying to get it on the ballot, people. I'm trying.
As chairman of the school board, it's officially my job to be chairman of the personnel committee. This year I deferred to Mr. Blair because of his passion for this and his expertise in the matter, and yet I did serve on the committee. And I also want to underscore and reiterate, many of us serve on this board because we're so thrilled with the education that our children are receiving from you educators, you teachers, and we just support you, and I thank you very much.
Article 4 will appear on the ballot as read. Article 5, authorization for a special meeting on cost items. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District, if Article 4 is defeated, authorize the Timberlane Regional School Board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 4 cost items only. Without the article, this district would have to petition Superior Court for a special school district meeting. This saves the district the expense of attorney's fees and court costs. There a motion to place this on the floor. Motion by Sue Sherman. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Spiro. And a presentation and intent is by Mrs. Sherman.
So if I could have the intent statement slide come up so the audience can see it.
Be the one before that.
Thank you. The intent, this article is suggested by the New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration as a cost-saving measure.
Thank you. Any discussion or comment on Article number 5? There being none, Article number 5 will appear on the ballot as read. Article number 6, Danville Elementary Sprinkler System. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate up to $503,000 for the installation of a fire suppression sprinkler system, capital project in the Danville Elementary School. This amount would be combined with $250,000 previously raised and appropriated in the 2015-16 budget for this purpose, with the balance of the $503,000 to be raised by taxation in 2016-17. Majority votes required. The total cost of the project is $753,000. Is there a motion to put Article 6 on the motion by Mr. Collins? Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Sherman. Mr. Collins.
Statement of intent for this warrant article. This article will allow for the installation of a fire suppression sprinkler system, FSSS, at Danville Elementary School. All of our schools have FSSS, although some only have FSSS in their boiler rooms. The schools in Sandown and Danville have FSSS in their boiler rooms only. The $503,000 requested this year will be combined with the $250,000 previously raised and appropriated from the 15-16 budget for a total project cost of $753,000. Next slide. According to the National Fire Protection Association, in educational properties, direct property damage per reported fire was 62% lower when wet pipe sprinklers were present, compared to fires with no automatic extinguishing equipment present. And 93% of fires in these properties were confined to the room of origin. And over half of the structure fires in these properties, 53%, occurred between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. A sprinkler system mitigates property damage until the fire department arrives.
Recommended by the school board 710, not recommended by the budget committee 331. I'll put it on the floor for discussion. Yes, Mr. O'Neill.
Yes. I have a letter here from the Danville Fire Chief who would like me to read this. Stated 1/14/2016. It's to the Danville Board of Selectmen. He's asking the following questions to the school board and the Superintendent Metzler. It says, why weren't the fire chiefs in Danville and Sandown contacted about proposed sprinklers being installed in the schools? Number two, when the school was built.
How about we address one question at a time? Just
Okay.
so.
No, that's fine.
So the first question.
Why weren't the fire chiefs of Danville in particular, but he also knows that Sandown wasn't contacted as well for the installation of these sprinklers in the schools?
I'll answer a question with a question. I understand this letter is addressed to the school board and superintendent, but I haven't received this letter.
Well, it's to the Danville Board of Selectmen with the questions.
So he is asking the
But
questions.
he's asking these questions, and obviously I couldn't answer them because we don't have.
But to clarify, he never asked those questions of this board or the superintendent before this evening.
Okay, the question I'll ask is, anybody have the answer?
You're putting something into a school that
Well-
would have jurisdiction over the Danville Fire Chief, and he's asking why wasn't he contacted? I think that's a legitimate question.
But he's
Okay.
asking you. That's what I find odd.
Okay, let's move on to the second question. Obviously, yes, Ms. Sherman, do you have an answer to that first question?
Mr. O'Neill, I did some of the research for the board on this particular article. This monies for this project was originally in the facilities line budget. We decided to remove it from a line budget and put it into a special warrant to give the community an opportunity to hear and speak towards it. It's a sizable amount of money. However, the research I did, because I live in the town of Plastow, I spoke to the Plastow Fire Chief. That's where I received my information. I did not feel I could reach out to the Danville Fire Chief, and I was just finding general information, the percentages, that type of thing. That's what I did. So I did not personally speak to your fire chief.
Thank you. Question number two.
It says, when the school was built, the local fire chief and state fire marshal's office waived any sprinkler requirements. His question is, what's changed?
Anybody have an answer to question number two? Okay,
Okay, I'm
moving on.
Number three. He's asking, is this a life safety improvement or property conservation improvement? When school is in session, Danville has the firehouse manned, and our response time is less than 3 minutes. Danville's fire department also conducts 10 fire drills a year, and the time for total evacuation averages from 2 to 3 minutes. He also says that number 4 is the boiler room has sprinkler heads, as does the kitchen area over to the cooking appliances. So part of that intent, I believe, needs to be updated with that reflection. Now I'd like to turn around and actually my questions.
Okay, you have to get up to the mic, but
Okay.
you're going to hold on, please, for a minute. Yes, Mr. Sapia.
A couple of questions to Mr. O'Neill. Or comments. I'm not too sure, and I never looked at this as a jurisdictional issue. I looked at it as we would raise and appropriate the money if the voters decided to go ahead and move forward with that. I reached out to people in the industry, and they've said it was a life safety issue, number one. Number two, I would hope that we would do it just as we did in Atkinson when I was a selectman, in conjunction with the fire department, the planning board, and those various agencies within the town. So it would be a collaborative effort once the money was appropriated. Question for you. Is the Danville Fire Department volunteer or full-time?
We have it manned during the operating school time.
You do?
So
Okay.
it is manned.
Okay. By how many people?
We have 2 on staff.
You have 2 firemen on staff?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna bring this
We are
back
not a
into.
volunteer fire department.
I'm gonna bring this back into Article number 6. We gotta let's focus on the article to raise and appropriate $503,000 for the sprinkler system.
Now my question is that this total article is $753,000 of taxation. This is the current tax card for Daleville Elementary is $5.2 million. And it's been said over public meetings that there is going to be no savings in insurance with this sprinkler being installed. So we're roughly going to spend 15% of the cost of installing this sprinkler of the assessed value of the building. That would be equivalent to putting in a $45,000 sprinkler into a $300,000 house, which at least in a home you're going to be sleeping in and is also above grade and below grade because it mostly might have a second floor and a basement. Danville Elementary does not have either of those.
Yes.
Just a comment. In looking at this article, of course, the sprinkler system, we want all of the children to be safe. And so I think the first consideration here is, are we doing everything that we can to ensure that those children are safe and get out safely in the case of a fire? That's first and foremost. But in addition to this, for the district, this is also protecting our assets. If you look at the intent statement, when you see how much less the damage is, the percent damages that's incurred to a structure with these type of sprinklers, it really is a great protection for us in the case of a fire. So it goes beyond a safety issue, and I understand that the school meets the safety requirements in terms of the fire safety equipment that's there now. But this goes beyond that, and in my mind, it makes sense for the voters to consider this because, number one, it does ensure the safety of the children just a little bit more, and it does also ensure our investment in the school itself, in the physical property of the school.
Mr. Delfino, do you have a sprinkler system in your house?
Mr. O'Neill, if you could step back the mic and let the next person in line come up and ask a question, please. Thank you. Mr. Gerns.
Yes, David Gerns from Plastow. That's G-E-R-N-S for the record. I have a question, Mr. Moderator, that I'd like to direct to Mr. Heffernan. I noticed the Budget Committee was tied on a vote on this item. Can you explain what the issues that the Budget Committee had with it?
I can just speak to my vote. I did vote in favor of it. I can't speak for the 3 that voted against it.
Yes, sir.
I'm one of the Budget Committee members that voted against it. I am all for and 100% supportive of the spirit of the Warren article. Mr. O'Neill pointed out that it's 15% of the operating budget. I don't care if it's 100% of the operating budget, that's worth one child's life. The reason I voted against this Warren article is I was not confident that the budgeted amount was accurate and adequate to fund the project.
Thank you. Mr. Sapia, something new.
Yeah, something new. I was kind of torn on this, to be quite honest with you. It's an awful lot of money, as you suggested, Mr. O'Neill. What I did was I reached out to a number of professionals in the business, to children's safety, protection of assets, but the other thing that I don't think has been brought up here is when those firemen do show up, those are really the people that are going to get protected by something like that in case of an incident. So it was the totality of those 3 things and the feedback I got from experts in the field. I'm not a fire suppression expert, and I've never shown up to a fire. But when professionals in the industry tell me that it's prudent to do this and it does save lives, I can't put the cost on a life. I can't put a cost on a fireman's life. I can't put a cost on a child's life. And that's what swung my vote.
Yes, Mr. Collins.
Mr. O'Neill asked what changed, because when the building was built, there was a waiver. And I think what changed was we looked around at all the schools and we saw that every school had a fire suppression sprinkler system, except for 2. And so I guess in the spirit, and I feel it's our job to look after the safety of the kids in the school district. When we see a deficit in the safety, we try to improve it, and we try to move towards closing that gap. So this is an effort to do that. We see a deficit at 2 of our schools, Sandown North and Danville Elementary, and we want to close that gap and improve the safety.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Sherman.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Moderator, about process?
Sure.
Thank you. If Mr. O'Neill's comment about we had made a mistake in the intent, I certainly want to correct that statement in the intent. Can we accept a motion to amend the intent statement?
Yes, you can.
So I'll put in writing, but the schools in Sandown and Danville have FSSS, no, in their boiler rooms and kitchens only?
That's correct.
That would be my motion, if that would make,
Okay, Ms. Sherman, you have to write that motion down and sign it, please. Yes, Mr. Collins?
Yeah, I'm curious to know, it sounds like Mr. O'Neill spoke with the fire chief in Danville, and I'd be curious to know if he supported the effort to install sprinklers in that school, just in general.
You have to approach the mic, Mr. O'Neill, please.
Point of order, there's a motion on the floor without a second.
Well, actually, the motion's not on the floor yet because I haven't got it in writing and I haven't read it.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
I cannot speak on behalf of the fire chief. I mean, you're looking for an answer to a question that I did not ask. I asked him for some facts, and I knew that there were suppression in the kitchen. When I went on the annual tour, I could see that when I was in there in the kitchen. And I asked him if he would confirm that and put it in writing, which he did.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. The motion is to read the schools in Sandown and Danville have FSSS in their boiler rooms and kitchen only. So in the article in the intent, after boiler rooms, we will insert and kitchens only. There's been a motion by Sue Sherman. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Doobie. I'll put it on the floor for discussion. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Mr. George.
If we're being perfectly accurate, I would suggest that this be corrected, that it is only the kitchen hoods that have fire suppression systems,
Well,
not the kitchen in total.
Thank you.
Is that correct, Mr. Hughes?
Okay. George, I'll run the meeting. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor for sprinkler systems in the boiler room and kitchens only. That's the motion. That's what we're going to discuss. Yes.
If we're going to
Nancy.
discuss changing this motion about where sprinklers might be in a particular building, I would feel much more comfortable if Mr. Hughes came forward to validate and confirm what the facts are.
If he can add to the motion for boiler rooms and kitchens only, please come up, Mr.
I don't
Hughes.
want him to add, I want him to confirm what the facts are so we have the proper
Well,
information.
I understand that, but the motion we have is... Mr. Hughes.
In our kitchens, we have what's called an Ansel system, which is basically like a fire extinguisher that's piped through the hoods. In our mechanical space, we have sprinkler systems that's tied in with our well systems on sprinkler heads.
Thank you. Anything new on the motion? Yes, Dennis.
So hearing that, is this in kitchens only? Technically, it's not throughout the kitchen, correct? Am I hearing that correctly?
The motion would be insert after boiler rooms and kitchen only. That's the motion.
It's not an
Any further discussion on the motion? Yes, Mrs. Sherman.
This is the first year we've been, had intent statements going on the ballot. It is very important to me personally that we get correct information on the ballot.
Yep.
So I don't care whether it says kitchen, kitchen hood, or delete it, but I want the correct information. So that's why I suggested, to help Mr. O'Neill understand better, that if they're in the kitchen in Danville as well.
Thank you. Would there be nothing further? I'll take a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion to insert right after the schools in Sandown and Danville have FSS in their boiler rooms and kitchen only. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against the motion signify by saying no.
No.
We're going to use the cards.
Abstaining?
We're going to use your voter cards. All those in favor of the motion, yes, would be to insert kitchens only after boiler room. Signify by saying, lifting your card, please. Okay. If you are in favor of the motion to insert kitchen only after boiler rooms, that's what a yes vote is for. All those in favor of the motion signify by lifting up your voter card. All those opposed signify by raising your voter card. The ayes have it. So the motion will read, in the intent would be the midway through the paragraph, the schools in Sandown and Danville have FSS in their boiler rooms only. So now we're back to the motion. The motion on the floor is Article number 6, to see if the voters will raise up to and appropriate $503,000. Any further discussion on the motion? On the article. The motion failed. Yes, Kim.
In response to Mr. Collins' question as to whether or not the Danville Fire Chief supports this, the answer is no. He did come to a selectman meeting and stated categorically that he did not approve of this.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
I have one more comment. I would also like to point out, since we're quoting the National Fire Protection Association, that over 90% of fires occur in the kitchen or boiler area. I don't think that's in the intent. I think it would be nice to add that to the intent.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to add that. I will write it down.
Yep. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to add.
You write down your motion, and as I get them, I'll read them.
Do you want me to bring it up to you?
On a piece of paper. You have to. You just write down in hoods and then sign it. Kitchen and hood. No, it doesn't. It failed. It failed. It just said boiler room only. So now you want to add. It failed.
But it allows us to revote, to change our vote. Any change that we feel changes the...
No, that's where unanimous.
I would argue that it doesn't change the intent of wanting to put sprinklers. No.
No, we're back up. I want to make a clarification. Mrs. Sherman's motion failed, so we're back to the original article. There were more no placards up than there were yes placards. Then, okay. Yeah. Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, the minutes, the people taking the minutes are saying it.
Okay, I stand corrected. The motion did pass. So it does say, in the intent, it does say boiler rooms and kitchens only. I have a motion by Mr. Collins to add in kitchen hoods. You want to sign this, please? Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Delfino. Okay, the motion on the floor now is the same sentence. The schools in Sandown and Danville have FSSS in their boiler rooms and kitchen. We're going to insert hood only. So there's a motion, it's seconded. I'll put it on the floor for discussion. Is there any discussion? Yes, Mrs. Green.
So if I understood Mr. Hughes correctly, it's not actually a sprinkler system that's in the hood, it's a fire extinguisher system? Right?
Mr. Hughes,
Because
you'll have to come down. I'm not an expert in fire suppression systems and hoods.
Because FSS stands
If
for
we could just quiet down a little so that we can
fire suppression sprinkler
get this
system.
moving.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, the question was?
The question is there a fire suppression system? And Mrs. Green, go ahead.
Okay, the article says fire suppression sprinkler system.
That would be water.
So the kitchen hoods do have water,
That
or?
would be a suppression system, that's chemical.
Right, so a sprinkler system is water, and what we have on the hoods is chemical.
That is correct.
So then the intent statement, if we amend it to say kitchen hoods, is incorrect.
Well, no, the motion is a motion, whether it's correct or not, but Mr. Collins wants to insert hood after kitchen. So that's the motion on the floor.
And I'm pointing out that it's technically incorrect and untruthful right now, by accident, because FSSS stands for Fire Suppression Sprinkler System, and we do not have a sprinkler
system.
Well, then we have to amend,
Okay.
take the word sprinkler out.
Mr. Hughes, what type of fire suppression system is located in the kitchens of our school system? Is it a sprinkler system water, or is it a fire suppression chemical?
Fire suppression chemical.
Thank you. So, Mr. Collins, you're in, I guess, the fire sprinkler system is what we're discussing now in the hoods. Do you want to continue with that motion?
Yeah, I would, because I think saying that, specifying the hoods rather than just saying in the kitchens, because there isn't water in the kitchens, there aren't sprinkler systems in the kitchens. Okay. So
Go ahead, sir.
So I can
it's
provide
less
clarification.
misleading. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
I can provide clarification to Mrs. Green's question. Right into the mic. So I work in the life safety industry. I'm quite familiar with NFPA codes and regulations. A fire suppression sprinkler system, also known as an FSSS, is any mechanism to suppress or extinguish a fire, which can be water, liquid, or chemical.
Very good. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the motion to add hoods after kitchen in the intent? Yes, sir.
Dean Soterakopoulos, Sandown, New Hampshire.
Could you spell that, Dean?
S as in Sam, O-T-I-R-A-K-O-P-O-U-L-O-S.
Good Irish name. Go ahead.
I'm not an expert, but from the knowledge I have, you do not put water in a kitchen in a hood, period.
Thank you. Is there any other comment on the motion to insert the word hood after kitchens? Yes, Ms. Raymond.
Kimberly Raymond Plastow, R-A-Y-M-O-N-D. Point of clarification, this sentence actually says schools in Sandown and Danville, and we've been speaking about Danville specifically. So it's unclear if these modifications apply to both schools.
Yes, it would, because it says the schools in Sandown and Danville have FSSS in their boiler rooms and kitchens only. The motion on the floor is to add Hood after that, so it does include both Sandown and Danville.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not sure that anybody has verified that that is the case in both locations.
Mr. Hughes, you might as well just have a seat up here where it says reserved for Mr. Hughes.
And while he's coming up to answer, additionally, I think there is a different intent statement that was read and shown up on the board. I thought there was additional information than what's on the page. That information there.
Was different?
Below that. The next, yes. I'm not sure. And
Yeah, right now I'm reading the intent article because that's where we are. So if we can put on the intent article on the screen, please. Mr. Hughes, is there, both locations have FSSS?
Sandown North and Danville both have hood suppression systems in the kitchens and sprinkler systems in the mechanical space, boiler rooms.
Thank you. Don't disappear. Have a seat, please. Is there any other discussion on the motion?
And that is the limitation to Sandown, too. There's no additional sprinkler systems. Just wanted to clarify.
If that's what Mr. Hughes just said, then he's the expert. Is there any other? Yes, Nancy.
Yeah, I can see there's a lot of concern and opinions on this subject, and I just want folks to know that if you go back and watch any of the meetings over the past few months, there was an enormous amount of discussion by the board on this particular warrant article. Board members were very concerned about equity between all four towns in terms of the safety of the children, the safety of the firefighters, and the investment in the building, the property itself. No one up here, to my knowledge, is looking to force this on the community. If people don't want to pay for it, we don't do it. It's as simple as that. We wanted to offer you the opportunity to do this for the kids of Danville, for the building in Danville, but if that's not what people want, that's fine too. So I just wanted people to know that's where we were coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. No further discussion. I'm going to ask for a vote on the motion. The motion is to insert the word hood after kitchen hood. So midway through the intent article would be the schools in Sandown and Danville have FSSS in their boiler rooms and kitchen hoods only. All those in favor to insert the word hood, raise your placard. Those against inserting the word hood, raise your placards. The ayes have it. So in the intent statement, halfway down, it will be the schools in Sandown and Danville have FSSS in their boiler rooms and kitchen hoods only. Is there any other discussion on the intent, or can we get back to the warrant article? Yes, Mrs. Sherman.
I'd just like to clarify Ms. Raymond's question concerning the slide that she thought that would just continued the intent, that the intent ends at the bracket on the slide at 753, and then that next slide about the National Fire Protection was just an additional, some information that we could discuss with you tonight. It's not going to be on the ballot.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm not going to make the motion that I did because
No.
that other part of the intent is not on this.
That's correct. Is there any other discussion on Article number 6? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Michael Costanzo from Sandown. And,
Michael, could you spell your last name?
Costanzo.
Okay, thank you.
I'm concerned about Sandown being mentioned so explicitly in this, and especially in the discussion tonight, with the money basically being earmarked for Danville. Why is there no funds appropriated for sprinklers in Sandown?
Thank you. Who wants to? Mrs. Sherman.
That's an excellent question. In a CIP plan, the next buildings we should consider, if we're going to be equitable, would be Sandown North. I believe putting Sandown in the statement of intent was only meant to clarify that we've got a couple schools we still need to take care of, that we're not just saying it's only Danville, that we fully believe, to be equitable, Sandown would be considered in the next, I hope, budget year or in a CIP plan. It may not be next year, it could be 3 years out, but it would be part of our thinking process there. That was all.
Yes,
I would
Nancy.
just like to add very quickly that we did actually discuss a warrant article for a fire suppression system in Sandown as well, and we discussed that at length, and it was finally put aside for this year because we were concerned about the collective bargaining agreement passing, and we did not want too many warrant articles with high dollar figures on the warrant.
If I can make a quick announcement, the PTSA is happy to support you all, and they just wanted to let you all know that they're closing. So in the next 10 minutes, if you want coffee or something to eat, they just told me to let you all know that. Yes, Dennis.
And the other point with that, there also was the $250,000 previously raised, so that's why Danville went before Sandown, because of that money was already set aside from last year.
Thank you. Did they answer your question?
Mostly. I'm
Go ahead.
just still concerned about Sandown being mentioned so explicitly without money, being appropriated.
Thank you. Oh, Mrs. Green.
Thank you. There were many permutations that we considered, Mr. Costanza. We looked at possibly doing the piping in both buildings in 1 year and then connecting them to a water supply in the second year. We looked at doing Sandowns through the capital reserve account and having Danville be appropriated. So we did look at various permutations, but the board didn't go forward with any of those. They chose this one. Now, the difference between Danville and Sandown, in my opinion, is that the Sandown fire chief supports some kind of sprinkler system or general fire suppression improvement in that building. So I did, of course, advocate for something this year for Sandown.
Thank you. Anything new on the article?
John Hughes from Danville. I just want to clarify the statement Selectman Farris stated about the chief saying that sprinklers are not needed in the school. When did that happen? Or
Okay.
do you recall? Because I believe the
Mrs.
chief
Farrer, if
is
you-
of the mindset that he never stated that, and that is
Okay.
not his opinion.
Okay.
So
All right, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on Article number 6? Anything new on Article number 6? Yes, sir.
For the point of focusing the discussion, since it seems to become muddled between Sandown and Danville, even though you're really intending Danville, and understanding your intent to protect the students, and I would also highlight protect the teachers at the school. Mrs. Sherman, when you spoke to your chief in Plastow, and you did your research, did you ever visit the school in Danville on this particular subject? Because
If you would like to answer that, Mrs. Sherman, you can. Well, she waited for me.
I waited for permission to speak. I did not go back out to look at the school. I have been through the school for facilities tours numbers of times, but not specifically. I did rely on our facilities director to give me some information about what was there, what wasn't there. FSSS.
Thank you for doing that work. We're asking the school district to spend a lot of money in Danville, and Mr. Sapia, you've indicated your experience down in Atkinson, I believe. Danville is one floor. I believe it's nearly all cinder block. It has an extraordinarily short evacuation time and a fire station that is extremely close. To make broad generalizations relative to lots of other things in other places, and to compare Sandown and Danville even, is not appropriate. We should be looking at specifically what is sensible money spent. We know the value of a life is incalculable, but this is a lot of money, and it doesn't necessarily improve a thing.
I'll let you respond to that, and then I'm going to move it.
Just so we're clear, Mr. Springer, who I respect very much, I didn't make the comparison between the two. My questions to the experts in the field was, do these types of systems save lives, and what would they, in their expertise opinion, recommend us doing? Nothing, wait a minute, something or nothing. And in every case, it was, I would highly recommend that you move forward with this. I agree with you. It's a ton of money, and trust me, we have all kinds of things around this district that we need to focus on. So when you need to prioritize. I also believed, and I was one, I think Mrs. Green and I kind of sat in the same opinion, that we should move both schools forward. I think that's our intent with the capital improvement plan. But I in no way, shape, or form, I agree with a lot of your analysis, 2 versus 1 floor, and that's why those other schools have them. We have a tremendous investment in the Danville Elementary School and Sandown North. But once again, I deferred to the experts. So hopefully that brings some clarifications to it.
Thank you, Jack. Is there anything new on Article number 6 to raise up to $503,000? Anything new? Sir?
Bob Wisecarver Atkinson, Wisecarver. Just a couple of clarifying points. I heard a member of the Budget Committee say that they weren't sure of what the final cost of the project would be. Is that correct?
Would you like to answer that? Go ahead.
My statement was I wasn't confident that the amount was accurate or adequate.
Thank you.
And this has all been put together without the approval, and whatever comment has been made about the Danville Fire Chief is hearsay. He's not here.
That's correct.
So this voting body really has no basis to understand whether or not he agrees with this or not.
That's not up for debate. What's up for debate is the
Right.
up to $503,000.
I understand that, but the amount is not specific, correct? I mean, we don't know that it's going to cost that amount.
The warrant article reads up to $503,000.
Do we know that the cost of installing the system is the amount appropriated?
We did have experts come in, and they did say, if I'm not mistaken, George, that they gave us a quote, and they said that would be sufficient to get the job done. So what we didn't want to do was fall short of that number. We had lengthy dialogue on it. There was a lot of research done. Mr. Hughes came in with, I believe, the contractor and the expert, and said that there were sufficient funds to do the project.
And this is only one school.
Yes, and understanding, the other thing I think I need to point out here is that when you're a school board member from Atkinson and you want to appropriate this kind of money for another town, as my fellow board members did, it shows our passion and concern for our neighbors, and we don't, at least I don't, and I don't think anyone else on the board or the budget committee really identifies the safety and well-being of the children, the teachers, I think to Mr. Springer's point, or the firemen, from town to town to town. This is a district issue, and I think we need to come together on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I'll take one more comment from the fine gentleman in Danville.
Thank you. Josh Horns, Danville. My question is just simply, we intend to appropriate $753,000, is that correct? Okay, so I have a follow-up. Then should not the article read, shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate up to $753,000?
Mr. Stokinger.
We got clarification from the Department of Revenue Administration about, or within the last week, on that very matter. And in that there's $250,000 in this 16 budget. What we have to raise and appropriate is the additional 503 to get to the 753. And could I comment on the 753, Mr. Moderator?
Did that answer your question?
If that's what DRA says, then I'll take their word for it. I do have a follow-up, but it's a clarification. I don't want to waste everybody's time. So, yeah, I'll ask it. Okay, so to appropriate means to set aside. So DRA is saying that we're setting aside $500,000 for this project, and that's okay, because are we spending the money?
We're going to raise and appropriate in the 17 budget $503,000.
Okay, so we're going to be encumbering the money in the previous budget year for $250,000?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything further? Nothing. Anything new on the warrant article?
Yes, I do want to clarify, and because Mr. Hughes said that the fire chief did not say what I said he did.
Okay, the
that
fire chief's
there was-
not here.
He's not here, so it is hearsay, and I apologize if I misspoke, but that's
Thank
all
you.
I'll
Any,
say on
any
that.
further comments on the article? Yes.
Yeah, just
Dr.
so
Metzler.
people understand, it's really not the fire chief that approves this. We have engineers that design it, and then the state fire marshal approves the plans. So, the discussion about the fire chiefs is really not relevant.
Thank you. No further discussion. Article 6 will appear on the ballot as read, and
Mr.
amended.
Moderator,
As-
Michelle O'Neill, Danville, I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article number 6.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Collins. All those in favor to restrict Article number 6 signify by saying aye. Aye. Noes? Ayes have it. Article 7, middle school renovation study. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate $30,000 to be used to study improvements to the educational experience of the students utilizing the 21 classrooms at Timberlane Regional Middle School that currently have no windows or skylights? Majority vote required. And is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Collins. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Blair. I believe Mr. Collins is going to read the intent and a brief description.
Thank you. These 21 classrooms make up 1/3 of all the classrooms at Timberlane Regional Middle School. All of our 6th and 7th grade students spend time in these classrooms that do not provide any light from the sun or have full spectrum lighting. Studies have shown significant improvement in student achievement when attending school in classrooms with sunlight. This money would be utilized to study available options to improve the experience of the students utilizing these classrooms, such as, but not limited to, lighting and/or skylights. Next slide. This is a schematic of the middle school. The front entrance is at the bottom of the page. The 8th grade wing is at the top of the page. Where you see the yellow dots are classrooms that do not have any access to outside light. That's the 21 classrooms that I just referenced. Next slide. There's a bunch of research that's been done I'll go through this quickly. Students with daylight in their classrooms from windows and skylights perform 20 to 25% better on reading and math tests than students without access to daylight. The same study shows that students in classrooms with larger window areas progress up to 20% faster than their counterparts in rooms with smaller window areas. Next slide. Students that had a well-designed skylight in their room, one that diffused the daylight throughout the room and which allowed teachers to control the amount of daylight entering the room, also improved 19 to 20% faster than those students without a skylight. These are all separate studies that have been done. Students in full spectrum light attended school 3.2 to 3.8 more days per year. Students with the most daylighting in their classrooms progressed 20% faster on math tests and 26% faster on reading tests in 1 year than those with the least amount of daylighting. Next slide. This study found a 7% improvement in test scores in those classrooms that use daylighting and a 14 to 18% improvement for those students in the classrooms with the largest window areas. Students in classrooms with the largest window area or most daylight were found to be testing 9 to 15% higher than those students in classrooms with the least window area. And the last one, a controlled study verified that depression was lowered among those students who experienced learning under full spectrum lighting. Also, depression actually increased under standard fluorescent lights among 4th graders. And then the next slide is just a slide that shows various options that might be considered. Nothing is written in stone. All this study does is look at, and it is just a study, and it does cost money. All this does is look at options for the school board to then put forward into a warrant article for some point in the future. This would probably cost most people about $3 next year.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article number 7? There being none, Article 7 will appear on the ballot as read. Article number 8, acceptance of report. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in 2015 annual report? Is there a motion to put that on the floor? Motion by Jack, second by Mr. Blair. Yes, Jack, are you going to do a quick presentation? You don't have to.
I think everyone understands this one. They gave me the hardest article of all.
There being no discussion on Article number 8, that will appear on the ballot as read. Article number 9. Article number 9 is a citizen's petition. Self-funding of full-time kindergarten on warrant petition by Kathleen Gorham and others. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District require all costs associated with funding a full-time kindergarten program be completely self-funding by private tuitions? Majority vote required. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak upon the citizen's petition? Yes, Mr. Collins.
I'd like to make a motion to amend this to add at the end, this article is advisory and non-binding, and I have that in writing.
Where do you want to put this, in the intent? No, at the very end of the article. I don't know if you can, because that's... You can do that? Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Collins. The motion is, this article is advisory and non-binding. He wants to put that after self-funding by private tuitions, question mark. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Ward. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, Mrs. Green.
Thank you. Since we have the benefit of an attorney here, I would like to call upon him to give an opinion as to whether this is a change in subject matter which is not permitted by law. I believe that it is introducing a different subject to the article and is not legitimate.
No, it's not a change to the subject matter.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, Dr. Metzler, you had indicated at the public hearing that this could potentially be a binding.
No, I did not.
You did not say.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Non-binding is what I said, Mr. O'Neill.
Is there a... Okay. Questions go through here. We're not going to argue back and forth. It's been asked, answered. Anything else on the motion?
Mr. Collins, I have a question. As the voters are usually considered to be the final arbiters of a question put before them, what would your reason be for wanting to make it advisory only?
I believe citizens' petitions are non-binding, so
No.
I believe...
No.
Well,
I
okay, hold
am
on,
not
hold on. I guess we're going to get a clarification.
I was asked to provide a legal opinion regarding the binding nature of this warrant article, and for a number of reasons, it's my legal opinion that this warrant article is non-binding. The first reason is that it attempts to bind subsequent school district meetings by making your kindergarten program fully funded. The Supreme Court has said in the past that this district meeting can't bind future district meetings, so it would have no legal binding effect on future district meetings. The second reason is that it's really within the board's purview from year to year to decide what kind of kindergarten program it wants to implement and then seek funding from the legislative body. So to the extent you're trying to restrict the board in the future from deciding what educational program it wants to recommend and implement, you can't do that the legislature has empowered the school board as the governing body to do that, not the legislative body of the school district. So my legal opinion is that the warrant article itself is really a sense of the meeting. If you guys approve it at the ballot session, the board understands that it would be the legislative body's preference to have full-day kindergarten fully funded. It's a sense of the meeting vote. It's not legally binding, and it's not binding on future school district meetings.
Understanding that you are a lawyer and I am not, I'm going to ask my questions based on pure logic. Number one, I did ask Mr. Collins, are you deferring to him for your answer?
Yes.
Okay. Number two, you referred to the school board, the school board, but this is a question being put before the voters. We understand that in things such as contracts, although there are exceptions, you are not allowed to bind a future board. However, this is not a contract. This is an expression of the will of the voters who elect you. So, and you have issued a legal opinion citing Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court was looking at a board. We are not a board. We are the voters.
Thank you. Anything new on the motion? We're talking on the motion. If you have something new on the motion
Yes.
to insert.
I think it's important, and I am an attorney licensed in Massachusetts. I'm not a New Hampshire attorney, and this is not a legal opinion, but I have been looking at this. It's relevant that it may be, its citizens' petitions are not necessarily, they can bind boards, but the language has to direct, that the citizens direct the board to, in this case, I'm not really even clear what this is, they would have to direct the board to make kindergarten self-funding. Apologies if that's not correct. I think that's important that we all learn what makes something binding and what doesn't. And because this does not direct, that may be why it is non-binding. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion, Mrs. Green, to add this article advisory and non-binding.
Thank you. If it's the attorney's opinion that it isn't binding to begin with, there's no need for an amendment.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? There being none, all those in favor to add this? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Blair, I didn't see you over there.
I could say the same thing.
Touche, you got me there.
Thank you. So, wow.
If we could hold on a minute, that was a time joke and Mrs. Sherman just got it. Yes, Mr. Blair.
While we can agree that it may not be binding, putting that additional text for the voters, I think, helps clarify their vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to add this article advisory and non-binding? We're going to use our little placards. All those in favor of putting that sentence at the end of the article, raise your placard. All those that are not in favor of putting that in, raise your placards. The motion passes. So the new motion, or the new article, would be, shall the Timberlane Regional School District require all costs associated with funding a full kindergarten program be completely self-funding by private tuition? This article is advisory and non-binding. Is there any further discussion on the article? We're almost out of here. Yes, Mr. Green.
You just have to get past me.
If we could just, we're almost done. If we could just listen to the comment.
This program was introduced 2 years ago to Budget Committee with the premise that it would be fully self-funded by tuition. Over the course of, many Budget Committee meetings, there were several of us on Budget Committee who were strongly of the opinion that it was never actually demonstrated through the financial materials available to us that the tuitions gathered actually paid for the program provided. Furthermore, we've been told, and have, despite asking at the board level, haven't been able to get firm information about how many parents who participate in this tuition program have their tuitions waived in full or in part. So a real question of equity in my mind on behalf of those families who are paying full boat. Not only that, but in the current world, the full day kindergarten, although it's a tuition program, the half day is covered by ADM, adequacy aid from the state. For those who are tuitioning into that full day program, the adequacy aid is, in a way, acting as a subsidy as against private daycare, full daycare facilities in our towns. So all of those things together say to me, we would like to see it absolutely clear that the program is fully paid for by the tuitions of those families attending.
Thank you. Any other discussion on anything new on Article number 9? Yes, Mr. Blair, and then Mrs. Sherman.
So if you use that argument that some parents are getting funded through tuition assistance to send their children to full-day kindergarten, and now you want the program to be fully funded by parents of tuition, that would mean that the full-time parents that are paying tuition would be subsidizing these people as opposed to some government program or something else. One of the problems I have with this warrant article is it says fully funded by tuition, yet there may be grants or other avenues of funding available that are not brought forth within this warrant article. The second thing, when you say fully funded, does that mean that the cost of the full day is paid by tuition, which is not the case today, or just the increase over what someone is paying for half day, what they're not paying for half day kindergarten? There's a lot of ramifications that this warrant article does not elaborate on. It's 22 words that is not well thought out in terms of, I understand the intent. What I see in this warrant article is that it's more of an intent statement than an actual warrant article. Thank you.
Yes, Jason.
Jason Grosky, Atkinson. This article is put forward by one of our school budget committee members, Ms. Gorman, and I'd like to focus for just a moment on the words all costs, require all costs. And if you're requiring all costs of kindergarten to be funded completely by private tuition, does that mean we're going to start apportioning out costs within a school building? For instance, the lights in the kindergarten classroom, are parents going to pay for that specifically? The heat that's required for that classroom, are the parents going to pay for that directly? The books, if a kindergarten kid goes down to the school nurse, are we going to charge the kindergarten parent for that trip to the school nurse? How about when a kindergarten student goes to the water bubbler? Are we going to charge them that amount of water? Teacher needs to make photocopies. Are we going to charge specifically for that? So where this was put forward by Ms. Gorman, I would just like to ask her to explain what all costs actually means. Thank you.
She here? Is she here? She's here. Is that you? No, she's not here. Okay. She's not here, so we can't direct that question to her, Mr. Grosky, but I am going to point to Mrs. Sherman. Actually, Sue, why don't you hold on? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tricia Collins. I'm from Plastow, New Hampshire. And I believe every child has the ability to have access to education. I believe that we are creating a system with this article of the haves and the have-nots. The kids who can afford to go to school, and unfortunately the kids who cannot afford to go to school. I totally disagree with this article. I believe that if you think about it, how many districts in Massachusetts and New Hampshire have full-time kindergarten? Can anyone answer that question? That is being paid for, that the parents don't have to pay anything for?
Sue, do you have that? Does anybody? Most is a fair answer, is
That's
what I'm
nice.
getting.
We've done a lot of research on this. But we just, how we would set up a full-day kindergarten. So most is a probably good estimate. And including myself as a 5-year-old, I know it's hard to believe I was ever 5, but I grew up in Massachusetts and I had free kindergarten.
Thank you.
And we know that establishing a love for learning at an early age is so important. So I think that, to have parents who can't afford to send their kids to full-time kindergarten is a major problem. I am totally against this article.
Thank you. Mr. Green, anything new on Article number 9 as amended?
All means all, and it's very common in industry to allocate costs to groups, to rooms, to portions of a facility. That isn't a problem. The warrant article is very specific that all means all. And we've been told by the lawyer that this is a sense of the legislative body item in any case, so it's perfectly straightforward. The petitioners want this is as a tuitioned program. They want the tuitions to fully cover the cost of the program. Very simple. I want to say one other thing about the idea of equity, because the discussion was turned a little bit from a program that was set up and established as a tuition program around to the idea of equal access to free kindergarten. That's maybe a worthwhile idea. That isn't the idea that is on the table right now. That isn't the program we're running right now. Everyone does have access at no charge to half-day kindergarten. That is the no-charge program. The district elected to provide a full-day program as a tuition program. The equity issue becomes, how is it fair to tell parents you can send your child if you pay a tuition?
Mr. Green,
but
I hate to interrupt you for a minute, but you've already discussed this when you first came up. Anything new for Article number 9? If there's nothing new, thank you very much. Anything new for Article number 9? I'll take one more comment from Mrs. Green, and then Jack, and then I'm going to move the motion. Yes, Mrs. Green, something new on Article number 9.
Yes. When the program was introduced to the Budget Committee and the school board, the administration assured us that the tuition would fully cover all the costs of the program. So the administration has figured out what the cost of the program is.
Thank you. Jack.
We evolve, and we always strive to get better year over year. We live in a small bedroom community, and I would hate to think that there was a family, and more importantly, a child in need, and he gets or she gets denied an opportunity based on a warrant article like this. I don't think that's what this community is about. I don't think that's a reflection of our community. I think we're much better than that.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the warrant article? If it's not new, I'm going to post it to the ballot as amended. Come on up, David. I know he is. I know.
Dave Hammond Atkinson. I just have a question. If the school board can answer. How many other school districts in the state do full funding by private tuition for kindergarten?
They don't have that information. So, without any further discussion, Article 9 will appear on the ballot as amended.
Mr. Moderator, could I have the floor just for 1 minute, please?
Sure.
I would like to recognize Michelle O'Neill. She has served on the Budget Committee for 12 years. Unfortunately, she will not be running this year, but she's been an outstanding member of the Budget Committee. She's served as chairman for a number of years, so I just think she deserves special recognition.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your service. Just a couple of notes. The special meeting of the school board will meet in the library immediately following the session to take up recommendation action on the warrant articles and conduct other school board business. And the budget committee will meet in room 506 immediately following the session to take up recommendation action on warrant articles and other budget committees. I just want to let everybody know that voting is March 28, 2016, and hopefully you all know where to vote. If not, you can contact your town halls. I have one. I said March 8th, didn't I? You said 28th. All right, a little dyslexic. March 8th, 2016. Yes.
Hi, Kathy Slade, Plastow.
If we could just keep it down so she can make a comment, please.
I have a quick question. I'd like to direct it directly to the super.
Is it on any of the warrant articles?
No. It's pertinent to the students, teachers, and parents of the district. Without committing yourself, I would just like to know what the chances are of a snow day tomorrow.
I adjourn this meeting at 9:38. Thank you very much for all coming. Drive safe. And we'll try to twist his arm to have a snow day.